Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingracia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast, and thanks for being here with me today. And I am very, very excited about my guest today, and I think that you're going to be blessed. Her name is Dr. Sherry Keffer. And I've been trying to get together with Dr. Sherry for this interview, really, I think for at least the past couple months. And we got postponed and had some issues with schedules. So I'm so delighted that it finally worked out and we get to visit. So let me just start by saying hi, Dr. Sherry.
Hey, Tony, it is so great to be with you. And what a delight to meet you. I mean, we got a chance to talk for a little bit before we even went on today. And I just want to say, those of you that are listening to him, he is a very special human being. He is an honest and real person who loves the Lord. But what an honor for you to be here for those that are listening, so they have someone that they can trust, that knows their heart, that has no judgment, but really is just calling them into a sweeter, better place in themselves, in their relationships, and with the Lord. So I can just sense that from our short time, but I'm honored to be here with you all today.
Dr. Sherry, thank you so much for your sweet words. That's very special. Thank you. So in the way of introduction, let me just say I have a few notes here. Dr. Sherry received both her PhD in Marriage and Family Therapy and her Master's of Arts in Theology from Fuller Theological Seminary. She currently specializes in individual, couples, and family therapy at her private practice in Newport Beach, California. She's a regular co-host of the nationally syndicated talk show New Life Live with Stephen Arterburn, which is heard in 150 markets with 2 million listeners. And she's the author of the book Intimate Deception, which is intended to help women heal from the trauma of sexual betrayal. And I just want to say right up front, we'll say it again at the end, but you can check out her website, drsherrykeffer.com, and that's DRSHERIKEFFER.com.
They can also go to braveone.com, BRAVEONE.com. I've actually kind of made that my hub now. I've opened a Brave One community for betrayed partners, women who've experienced sexual betrayal, as a support and encouragement, and to get kind of up close and personal with a lot of the things that I'm teaching. So that's where they can check it out.
Wonderful. I'm so excited about that. And you know that I'm a therapist. I'm a licensed professional counselor.
Yep.
I'm a pastor, and I do some counseling, and I work with men who are struggling with issues of sex addiction, sex compulsion,
right,
pornography addiction, all these things. And 2 years ago, God brought myself and a woman together in the St. Louis area. Her name is Charlotte. And she has a heart, much like you do, to work with women who have been betrayed in the context of their relationships, sexual betrayal. She has her own story. She was betrayed by her husband and lost her marriage, and it was just devastating. One thing led to the other. She ended up in a group that the purpose of the group is to help women who have been sexually betrayed, like a recovery group.
Absolutely.
And this group was powerfully redemptive for her. And through that, God called her forward and she got training. So she's been leading groups now for 9 years.
Nice.
And so God brought her and I together. So I have a weekly men's group in the St. Louis area for men. Charlotte leads the women's group for the women that have been betrayed. The name of their group is Willow Tree. And the reason Charlotte named it Willow Tree is because the metaphor of a willow tree has the capacity to bend, incredibly bend, in a violent storm or like a hurricane, but not break. And so it's a metaphor of what God wants to do with these women who are going through this tremendous storm of life. That you might be bending, and this is an incredibly hard storm, but you're not going to break, and God's going to get you through this. So I have some orientation to how difficult it is for women who have been betrayed by their husbands, what this journey looks like. And that very much is kind of what you specialize in. Is that correct?
It is. It is. And as I was listening to you, Tony, Debbie Laser did some research with a number of other folks. And this they found, that's why I love that willow tree picture, is that when a betrayed partner gets what they need, gets the resources, the support, the care, they're able to identify their own hurts, and they begin, as I say, I often tell betrayed partners that they're the ones that have to help them heal. There's post-traumatic stress symptoms that require us, I am one, but require us to get on our own gurney and get our own healing. But this is what Deborah Laser found, is that when a betrayed partner gets what they need, they actually showed symptoms not of post-traumatic stress, but of post-traumatic growth. There is this resiliency that can come out of it, and she is a testimony of that. And I love what she's doing. I love that she saw that in her own story. And I think her heart, your heart, and my heart would be the same on this, that instead of people healing broken, like an arm that's broken that isn't set right, my prayer is that people can not only heal, but heal well, because they're given the resources and direction they need, and they've got good people that are engaged with them in all of the sexual acting out and the impact of all that to help bring sobriety and safety and truth back into the relationship. So when we can assist them, like a good treatment team around these folks, many of them are able to come through it and even be stronger.
That's awesome. When you were saying that, it made me think just of the template of the gospel. Really, in a way, what you're describing there is the gospel, because the gospel is the death, burial, and resurrection of our Savior, and it speaks of God's ability to bring life out of something that used to be dead. So when things are horrible, the worst situation you can imagine, there's darkness, there's fear, it seems impossible. It's a horrible situation that nothing is too hard for God, and God can bring something incredibly good out of something that was incredibly bad. So even though the circumstance and situation might be profoundly difficult, I just feel this in my heart right now. I'm speaking to a listener. I don't know who it is, probably more than one. But if you are in the middle of a profoundly difficult situation, just have hope and hold on to God, because that's what the gospel is. It's His ability to bring life out of death. There was a time in my marriage when my marriage was defined by death. I mean, our marriage was a disaster, in large part because of the issue of sex. I was so broken sexually. My wife was broken. We were a mess. I ended up betraying my wife. I became involved in several adulterous affairs. And Jesus said in John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, destroy. And the devil was trying to close the deal on our lives. But we're a testimony of God's ability to redeem broken people and redeem broken marriages. So have hope. Don't give up. Hold on to God. And there's life ahead.
Well, and I love the fact that you're using the word hope. Do you know why, Tony? And so in the day when Hebrew was written, originally it was written much like Chinese or Egyptian. It was word pictures, like hieroglyphics. So the ancient Hebrew word for hope is ave, which means the strong nail that binds you to itself. That's lust, the strong nail that binds you to itself. The opposite of that is kave, which means what comes after the nail. And so when I think about your lives, when I think about others you're working with, or that person right now that is in that place that you feel that strong nail of lust, it is bound to you. As you do the work and continue to find freedom and let go of that nail, get unhooked from that lust, get unhooked from that acting out, and begin to come into sobriety and truth. It's amazing how different people look after the nail, right?
Praise God, yes.
Know people like that. I know people like that. And so you and I can both be hope givers. In my case, Tony, sadly, my marriage was a casualty. I fought for Connor. In our marriage, there was pornography, affairs, prostitutes, and I don't think I've ever fought harder for any one human being. And yet, even though our marriage was a casualty, God in his goodness, my life has been anything but that. And now, right, he's taken that devastating thing and he's using it like fish and loaves. He's just using it like fish and loaves to share with other people, to be a hope giver. So here you and I are. My marriage was a casualty, yours wasn't, but both of us are living lives that God is using us in and out of what happened. It didn't break us. It actually, like the willow tree, we're resiliently trusting God to use it and help others get free.
Praise God. So you're describing this dynamic of like before and after, God's ability to renovate. Like if you think of pictures of like these shows of people that are hoarders and then they come in the house and clean it up. And then they show pictures before and after. And that's what God does. He finds us where we are. We're a mess. We're broken. We're sinners. We're dysfunctional. It's a mess, but God begins to renovate the human heart and the human life. And then you end up with this before and after. And it just speaks of how amazing God is and his ability to recreate a human life and a human soul. So it's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So if I could ask Dr. Sherry, of all the topics in the world that you could have written a book about, you wrote this book called Intimate Deception. So why did you decide to write a book on the topic of sexual betrayal?
Oh, I think, Tony, to be honest, it's a part of my do-over phase, right? It is that do-over phase in my life. I never set out to write a book on intimate deception. I never set out to write a book on sexual betrayal. In fact, I was the girl that I call myself trauma squared, because I came out of a situation where I had significant mental illness in my home, and my family was very disconnected, disengaged, limping, lots of wounds there. And so what I hoped when I met Connor, now Connor was a pastor, he was serving at a church, I was captivated by him when I met him, and his dad had worked with some of the biggest names out there that you and I all know, and so he came from this amazing legacy of Christendom. But what I didn't realize is that there'd been a long history of sexual acting out. And so I knew about one thing. I knew that when we were engaged, he had made a phone call to a 900 number, which is a sex line. And I was so naive back in the day that I thought a 900 number meant like you calling and a recording, breathing heavy into the phone. And I wasn't even sure what people did with that. But come to find out, it was a live person. And when I found that out, I was devastated. I thought, why am I not enough? And this was post-marriage. I didn't know that when we were dating. When I found out about the 900 number, I chose to forgive Connor. Because I just had to look at my own life. And I thought, I am not perfect. I've done some bad juju. Right? I have things that I've failed in. So I forgave him. I didn't ask any more questions. But what I really did is I spiritualized the issue to that day. I went into my own type of denial. Because sometimes we spiritualize in order to get out of not looking at what was just staring us right in the face. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to know. And so it wasn't until we were married that this stuff began to come out within the first year of our marriage, not the affairs, but the pornography, not the prostitutes, but the other acting out was in the early stages. And I was devastated. I didn't know why, why would he want to go elsewhere when I was offering him, I hadn't had sex prior to marriage. I was offering him sex. I was excited to get to celebrate what I had waited 25 years to celebrate. I had no idea it would be devastated so quickly.
Wow, I'm so sorry. How long were you and Connor married?
So we were married 8 years and separated during that season of time twice. And I think, we were in counseling 4 years. We were seeing a therapist. Interestingly enough, the same therapist, and I love her. She was holding all pieces. She was holding the marriage piece. She was holding the individual piece, and me and him. And so when you're holding all the pieces, I think what happened is Connor might have been afraid to tell because there wasn't really a safe place. Because, if he told, she might tell or the whole thing would come up. So it held us in this steady season of deception for 4 years. And he never came out of that into truth. So I think that's why I'm very passionate about the two pillars that I think every betrayed partner needs in order to heal. And I would even say every couple needs this in order to heal. The two pillars are safety. Safety is sobriety, that they know you are working on stopping the sexual acting out behavior that has been hurting me and is hurting me. And the other thing that I think is a critical pillar is the truth.
Absolutely.
The truth. And so, a lot of partners, when they get safety, if they don't know what happened and they're still out of the loop on that, they can't settle their internal world. There's chaos on the inside. It's we can't rest in our own skin. And so going through a therapeutic, it's called a therapeutic full disclosure. It's a very well-planned, trained people that know how to do this, that walk them through a truth-telling opportunity where they, it's not giving them all the details of the size of the woman's, body parts or, things that would be so harmful. Because then if it's blondes or if it's a certain nationality, then every woman out there is going to be a trigger for you. But it's giving you the facts that you need to clarify what has happened in the relationship so that you can make a choice over, is this something I want to continue to be committed to? But my statistics, when I did my research, showed that 88% of the women, so 76% of them had clinical symptoms of PTSD. Just the same kind of stuff the soldiers get or police officers get or, first responders. These 100 women and 76% of them had it, 3 out of 4. 88% of them said, I will stay in this marriage even though these behaviors have happened. Pornography, masturbation, sex, affairs, prostitutes, cyber sex, the whole thing. I will stay if you stop lying and get safe, right? Get in sober zone. And that's a high number. And so that's why I am fighting for these families, because there is a resiliency to fight for the ones they love. Just need to help them get there. And maybe it's coming out of my story, Tony, and I didn't get the prize, right? I didn't get to see the end game with Connor. And so I'm left truly with some loss. And yet I can see out of that loss that God is still doing good to bring other couples to a place of honesty and the truth and, safety.
Yes. Awesome. Well, the fact is, as the old saying goes, it takes two to tango. And so you're very much like my friend Charlotte that I mentioned. Charlotte has been interviewed on the podcast, so probably most of our listeners have heard her story, but she tried so hard to fight for her marriage. She was in the 88%. She gave her husband chance after chance after chance after chance, hoping that he really would deal with his issues and work on his recovery and get to a healthier place and be able to tell the truth and live in the truth and live in the light. But he continued on and on and on in his deception over and over again. He'd promise, I'll never do it again. They'd have a period of time, then she'd catch him, and she'd catch him, and catch him, and catch him over. And how long can a woman put up with this? Eventually, you get exasperated, I guess, to the point where I can't continue to stay in this marriage if you're going to lie to me and if you're going to be unsafe. So if both people are willing to come to the party and do the work that they need to do, it's very possible that a marriage can be healed and redeemed. But what can you do if your partner isn't doing the work? It makes it really difficult.
Totally. And with us as betrayed partners, we call those events D-Days, like Pearl Harbor, to have the bomb dropped.
Yes.
Right? To find out about, Charlotte, to find out about whatever it was that she discovered. Those discoveries are bombs dropping, they're grenades. And really now to clinically know that they cause post-traumatic stress. A lot of the guys, when they get a copy of my book, Intimate Deception, Healing the Wounds of Sexual Betrayal, and they start reading about the trauma, many of the guys had no idea. In fact, true story, I had a guy call me who serves in the military, and he said, "Hey, Sherry, I picked up your book. Somebody gave it to me, and because my wife is in so much pain, and he was in a recovery group, and he said one of the guys handed it to me, and he goes, I really didn't want to read it because I'm looking at the cover, and it's got somebody on there. She looks kind of hurt, and I wasn't really I didn't want to hear about what I'd done, but he said, I picked it up. I was brave." And he said this. He said, "I had no idea, because I'm on the front lines. I had no idea that my wife had the same symptoms that I do." And this is what he said. He said the last time she discovered me, that I was in another affair, and there had been several, she screamed, "No!" And she screamed it so loud, she actually lacerated her vocal cords.
Oh my goodness.
So she has had to have therapy, and so he goes, I don't know why it took it to the point to get to something physical with her. But he said, "Sherry, I got to help my wife heal. I have done this to her. I have hurt her. And I just never knew. I wasn't looking at the impact of it as being serious and harming her body, harming her heart, her soul, her mind." So, there's tremendous loss. There's tremendous symptoms to their bodies. There's hurt. And I'm not telling y'all this to bear down on you. I'm telling you just because it's the facts. It's science. And, it doesn't benefit anybody to stay in that season of deception long. We want to try to shorten that instead of keeping it as long as it has been in days gone by. We're trying to bring the truth and safety into the forefront sooner.
It's very powerful what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more that most men do not get it. They don't have a clue. I think how devastating, how overwhelming, how shattering this is to a woman's heart and life when she finds her husband has been acting out in some way and sexually in violation of their marriage. And it's absolutely devastating. And this word trauma is very appropriate. And I don't think most guys get it. I remember one couple that I was working with several years ago, and this man had been involved in numerous affairs. And when his wife found out, his wife caught him, and then the truth came out. We worked toward and executed a full disclosure eventually, and the full disclosure was far worse than anything she imagined. She caught the tip of the iceberg.
Sure.
But there's something about the tip of an iceberg. There's always the berg underneath, you know. So this particular person, this man's wife, was in a family, and her mother died when she was a child. She was like only 9 or 10 years old. And there were several siblings. I can't remember, 3 or 4 siblings. So when the mama died, this young girl, 9 years old, became like the surrogate mom, taking care of the younger ones. And she grew up, and this was her life, you know. So the defining pain and hurt and trauma and difficulty of her life was her mother's death and the implications of that and what that meant. Well, later when they were married and he got caught acting out and this whole scene was unfolding, we were in my office one day. We were in the middle of a session, and in the context of this session, she said something like, it emerged, and she said, what you have done to me has hurt me way, way, way more than when my mother died. And when she said that, he got it. Because he understood the pain of her life and soul from her mother's death. And now my wife is telling me that my adultery, what I've done to her, has hurt her far more than her mother's death. He was like, oh my God. In that moment, he got it. Like he finally understood. He did not understand how deeply and profoundly he had hurt his wife.
So let me ask you a question. As a man, right, who has your own story, a redemption story, if you could go back in time, if I were to say, Tony, what was it about you that didn't get the impact? Because this is common, and you're bright. These guys are smart. They have strong minds. They run businesses. They have jobs that they have to do every day. It's not about intelligence. It's about this feeling state that they don't get as they're the one that's acting out. Can you speak to that in man language? Like, what is that?
Why don't guys get it?
Yeah.
Why are they so thick?
Why are they so thick? Why didn't you get it? Why don't guys generally get it? It takes a lot, like, for the nickel to drop, for them to see it as trauma and post-traumatic stress.
Right. Yeah, guys do not get it. Well, maybe it has something to do with their own narcissism, their own self-centeredness. They live in their own world. They see the world through their own eyes. I think maybe part of it has something to do, so it's hard to relate to another person's frame of reference, their feelings and their experience, because I'm experiencing the world my own way. Maybe it has something to do with...
Absolutely, take your time. Because it is common. And if you could, as a man, speak to that, wow. Right? Because there's going to be guys that you're going to shake the tree if it's something that really makes sense.
I know that guys tend to, and maybe not just guys, maybe guys and gals, maybe it's part of the human condition. We tend to minimize and justify and rationalize. Right?
Yep.
And maybe a way to say it is we deceive ourselves. We lie to ourselves. And we want to tell ourselves something, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It isn't that bad. Other people struggle with this, especially if nobody knows about it. Maybe it's no big deal. So they want to minimize. Maybe they don't want to look at it. They don't want to admit how bad this is, how hurtful it is to my wife. I think guys do this with pornography. They think it's no big deal. It's not a real woman. It's not like having an affair. A lot of guys look at porn. What's the big deal? So we want to minimize it, and maybe that helps us deny how much it really has hurt our wife.
Wow, that's powerful. Just hearing you say that, because I think it's true now that I'm not only a partner trauma therapist, but I'm a certified sex addiction therapist. So as I work with some men, this is what I've learned. I used to not want to know what they were thinking. I think out of my own hurt, it's like I was avoiding, like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I was just like, I didn't want to see, it was Oz, and I didn't want to see the real guy underneath that. But as I've sat with real men that are really struggling with this, they've said things like this to me, is exactly what you said. They've said, well, I can't tell her. I need to protect her. I mean, I need to make sure that, she's protected from this information. I don't want her to be hurt. That's my duty. Or as long as nobody knows it's going on, it doesn't hurt anybody. So you're right. It's self-deception. The master deceiver, right? Think about, sometimes when I look at this and I spend time with couples or with individuals, oftentimes the betrayed partner will see their husband as the enemy. And I'm not trying to say the devil made me do it in saying this, but let me say this, there's an enemy behind this. There is a great deceiver, the father of lies, the bottomless pit. He is, when someone is under the influence of pornography, cyber sex, affairs, it's like they're drinking in. It's not alcohol. They're not popping pills, but they are under the influence of the deceiver.
Yes.
They're sexually acting out in the most beautiful way that God made sex to bind us together. And it is the very thing that unravels families and homes and relationships and kids. It is a weapon of mass destruction. And so as a man, if you have an enemy who is out to get you, and you're like on that military front line to protect your family, it's not like there's going to be this guy, that enemy that comes to your front door and knocks with an Uzi and says, hey, I'm here to kill your family. You know how they do it? They come through the back door. They begin to erode your home through deceit, through the very act of what you're doing, because it undermines your power. It undermines dignity. It undermines your trustworthiness. You become that guy that harms the very ones that you love. And of course there's an enemy behind that, because he's trying to take us out one family at a time.
Hey guys, I hate to do it, but I need to jump in at this point to interrupt today's episode because I see from the clock that we are out of time for today. But I do want to invite you to come back next week, where we will continue this interesting and fascinating interview with Dr. Sherry Keffer. So I do pray that you'll be able to come back. I promise that it will be a blessing, because Dr. Sherry has some awesome things to share with us. So God bless you guys. In the meantime, have a great day. Have a great week. Be blessed in Jesus' name. And we'll see you right back here next week. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.